Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to NWA Nurses with Attitude. In today's episode, Leanne and I discuss the interprofessional team. Those are the people that often go unnoticed, but also make our lives a hell of a lot easier. So please give it a listen, let us know what you think, and hope you guys enjoy.
What's going on?
Not too much. Back again for another podcast.
Yes, we are.
I heard that, just a little housekeeping before we start. I heard that you got some good feedback on our new picture.
Yes, shout out to Canva Pro. I just think it really encapsulates like what we're here to do.
Yeah, for sure. I like the new graphic. Before we started the recording here, I was telling Joe that I appreciate his artisticness, and that's not something that I possess. And yeah, he did a really great job. So if you guys are listening and you like the graphic, do let us know. But yeah, Joe and I want to take it back to nursing today. We want to talk about interprofessional teams. I feel that a lot of, you know, media and exposure in healthcare is mostly related to healthcare aides, nurses, and doctors. But, there really is a whole team of other people that rarely ever get mentioned. And Joe and I kind of want to outline that today. So this was Joe's idea for a podcast. So we're going to leave it with Joe and take it away.
Yeah. So what kind of the reason why I thought of this idea was actually got some feedback. One of my friends who's a paramedic, and she said that this podcast she can just relate to it so much and she loves it. Um, and it kind of started making me think that we're all in this team with each other. And depending on whether you're working in hospital, long-term care home care, if you're a paramedic, all the professions within those scopes all help each other. And during the pandemic, the nurses in particular, and I don't know if it's just because I am a nurse or we are nurses, but I thought they kind of put us on a pedestal. And I don't know if that's a controversial thing to say right now. I don't know if you feel that way, Leanne. They kind of just like
Yeah.
made it all about nurses.
Yeah, I would agree. I felt that, we talked a lot about, like during COVID, how, um, there was a fight for wage increase and, proper staffing levels. And, these are things that we see every day in nursing. But especially during the pandemic, there was no emphasis put on, well, what about the housekeeping team? And what about the Rex team? And what about, the doctors? And,
Mm-hmm.
you know, these teams, we can't do our job without a proper support team. And, we all do have a common goal, really, of supporting our patients and residents. And yeah, I think it's really important that we take an episode, chat about them, sort of what they do, how they make our lives better. Yeah, what do you think, Joe?
Yeah, yeah. I think the first thing is defining what an interprofessional team is, because I don't know if a lot of people would know the scope that I'm even alluding to right now.
Right.
Because the interprofessional team, it's essentially everyone who you have contact with, not only work with, but who you have contact with in the field. So when I refer to that term, I'm referring to doctors, physiotherapists, occupational therapists, um, rehab therapists, respiratory therapists, speech pathologists, healthcare aides, even the family, dietary aides, housekeeping, clerks, and volunteers who just come in as well. Some other interprofessional disciplines that aren't specifically related to what we do as a nurse, but are chiropractors. There,
Yeah.
we use more physiotherapists than chiropractors. That said, chiropractors for me, I always go to chiropractors. They're a great way. Um, Another alternative for people who might not, like physiotherapists or find that they're not getting the results, they go to a chiro. Some people prefer them, some people don't. But
Hmm.
also physical therapists and personal trainers are huge ones because that's continuing care outside of the hospital, and that attributes to someone's life. We're living our life right now. We're trying to stay healthy. We might have some things that can increase our risk, and we can mitigate those by going to personal trainers, chiropractors, exercising regularly, eating healthy, going to a dietitian, going to a nutritionist. And then when that time comes that you need our care, then you're in our care. And the reason why I just explained that, just so you can see the link between why I think that those professions are also an interprofessional team, that kind of help us do our job.
Yeah, for sure. I also think, Joe, that for myself, especially when I talk about nursing and patients and giving care, my mind automatically goes to senior care and supporting seniors. But, in hospital, nurses see lots of different patients, from children to, people our age, late 20s, to seniors, all different walks of life. So, you know, we don't necessarily see chiros in um, long-term care, but you would see that type of support out in the community, or, that may be a type of recommended support, or even someone for that had surgery that needs post-surgical support, that sort of thing. So there's definitely a huge umbrella of professions here that really do support patient care. And yeah, I really feel that the media just shines a light on nurses, and that, nurses, just like teachers, are always fighting for a wage increase or whatever the case is. But
Mm-hmm.
you never hear anything about, I guess during COVID, you heard a little bit about the respiratory therapists, but you never really hear about the rec aides, or, housekeeping, the janitors, the people that really make our job, you know, where we can do the best job day to day and function as a team and make sure that the client, or I should say patient, needs are met.
Yeah, like 100%. When I don't think you were, no, no, this was the placement before we did the rehab unit. I was on a med surg unit as a student, and there was a housekeeper on the unit. And if you work med surg, or if you're planning on going to med surg, it's an extremely busy unit. You're always doing something. We had about 4 to 5 patients, and you're just constantly, you first thing you do your med pass, and then you're just doing intervention after intervention. You're documenting, you're giving report, you're contacting the doctor, you're doing orders. And in doing all of these things that we have to do as a nurse, we relied heavily on that unit, on our housekeepers, and they were amazing. That's when I first saw, like, wow, like, we're a team. His job isn't to go and transfer people or to watch out for people, but he was always, every time he was in the hallway, sweeping the floors, cleaning the units. Um, he was checking on the patients, making sure they were comfortable. He would reposition them. He would go to nurses, ask for their help, and say, "Hey, I noticed this person didn't eat all their meal. Like, could they eat something else?" Or saying that they don't like it. They were so interactive, um, and it made our job a lot easier, and a lot easier to continue care for the actual person as well.
Yeah.
Um, you don't have to have a 2 year degree. You don't have to be the smartest person in the world to be able to care for someone. So, whatever your title is, if you can collaborate with one another and look out for the person's interests, that's what
Yeah.
makes a team flow smoothly. Doesn't matter if you have the best nurse on the unit who, she scored 100% on her exams and she knows absolutely every bit of knowledge. If you're that nurse on that unit trying to handle everything yourself, it's going to be very difficult. And if you reflect, your patients aren't probably getting the best care as if you were to include the whole entire team.
Yes.
And that, and I don't know about you, Leanne, but when I did shift report, when I worked in long-term care, I started inviting the housekeepers afterwards. So I would do my shift report with my staff and what they needed to know, but I would also do a shift report after that with the housekeepers. And they got in about an hour after we started, so they would come in, and I would just pull them aside and tell them the information that they needed to know. Obviously, I wouldn't tell them everything that I would be sharing with the PSWs,
Hmm.
but just what the unit looks like today, what to expect, where they can help, where I can help them, and the unit would just flow so smoothly.
Right. I think that yeah, that's awesome. I never did a shift report. Looking back on my years in long-term care, I never did a shift report per se with the housekeeper, but I did always work in a float position. So from time to time, so I guess technically I was half float, half part time. So some of my shifts were always on one unit, but I would pick up to make full time hours at the time, like most of us nurses do. And they would float me around. So basically, I didn't really know what unit I was working on until I got to the facility that morning. And I found that because I don't know people's diets and it's really not realistic to be looking through care plans. In a perfect world that's wonderful, but at the beginning of a shift, I don't have time to go sit through and read through 40 care plans for all my residents. I need to know the high risk patients, the patients that are their codes, like a full code. So we would like resuscitate them in the event of an emergency. Um, who had a fall, who's on what's the med changes, narcotics or insulin, like the top priority things when I would float to a unit. This is what I needed to know. So I would, as I'm passing my meds and the cleaners were, or housekeepers were cleaning the rooms, or even the laundry staff would come and put away the laundry, whatever, I would just ask them questions like, do you know anything about this resident? Or do you mind, helping me with a transfer? All of the support staff was the sort of umbrella term at the facility I worked at. And they were all trained in how to do proper lifts and transfers and proper body mechanics. And, honestly, Joe, they were so helpful from time to time. Like, I don't think, you know, for healthcare aides or PSWs to 40 residents, that's 10 residents per
That's
healthcare aide.
insane. And that's
And
that's also, just to give context. You start work at 6:45 a.m. or 7 a.m. and you have 10 people to get up by 9 a.m. A lot of places their cutoff is like 9 a.m. at the latest. I think
yeah,
they want them out by 8:30. So you have 10 people per one person, and that 10 people they might need care that requires two people as well, right? So
yeah.
it's almost an impossible task.
Right. So at times I would reach out. I mean, instead of me calling a PSW or a healthcare aide away from another resident, the housekeeper was right there. I would just ask her, hey, do you mind just helping me with a transfer or this lift or whatever the case is, And it would save so much time and stress on the healthcare aides. Like, I can't say this enough. And I've been through the chain. I started in laundry and then I went to healthcare aide and I did the schooling and I worked as a healthcare aide for many years. And, now we're in nursing and working our way to RN. Like, I've done the duties of every position almost in long-term care and I've worked my way up. And as a nurse, I think that's valuable, Joe, because I really do know I really know what it takes to care for people as a healthcare aide. And, I understand how this pressure, like you say, you have 2 hours to get 10 people up. That's crazy when they need shade. Some of them need to be shaved. Some ladies like their lipstick, like all these little things. Plus you have a shower, bath, whatever the case is. Like, it's just crazy. You have to leverage your team, and having good healthcare aides as a nurse is life changing. They are the backbone to our day. Like, if the healthcare aides aren't on time and doing what they do so well, it throws off the whole day,
Yeah,
throws off our med pass. When I would float to a floor, I wouldn't have a routine. I'm literally standing in front of a med cart. I have medication for 40 people. I don't, I have an idea of who to start with in terms of insulin and things like that, but I don't know the regular flow. But who could
yeah,
always tell me? The healthcare aides or the
yeah,
housekeeper. They'd be like, oh, yeah, she starts over here in this hallway and works her way around.
yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. That's all I need. They're like these little like fountains of knowledge. And, I it makes me very, very upset when you have nurses that come to a floor and they just, treat the healthcare aides like shit and like
Yeah.
they're not valuable. Man, they are so valuable.
It may seem like little things that we're saying right now, but when you're trying to um flow with a whole unit, and this is someone's life, like this isn't just a person that you need to wake up and put in their wheelchair or walk them down. like these are humans who have routines just like we do.
Mm-hmm.
And for each person, like it's a different routine, a different person, a different way that they interact with the things or the things there with them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and yeah, like having those staff is such a critical point of care that nurses really need to understand.
Yeah.
It's just yeah, I everything you're saying. I used to float too, and during the during COVID, I was redeployed as a PSW on a lot of units, and let me tell you, Leanne, I'm not like you. I like nursing was
Yeah.
my first step into a healthcare. It was brutal. It
Yeah.
was really brutal. Like, and I would go on some units, and I'll be honest, not everybody is as perfect as like we're talking about, and there's never going to be any team that's perfect, but there will be teams that try, and it's the teams
Right.
that try and like put effort that do make it better. But I remember one of my experiences, I went on a floor that I've never been to even as a nurse, and they put me as a PSW, and they gave me the hardest team of that floor without me knowing, and
Of
I was
course they
doing the
did.
care for these people, and I had no idea what I was doing, Leanne. There was someone who like did not speak English, and I had no idea, and I was asking for help, and they were sighing and they were doing this, and they weren't helping me. um and it's hard, like it's really difficult doing that care um for all those people. And then to segue that into hospitals, you don't have healthcare aides. So in hospitals, nurses do everything. Nurses go in, they do all the care, um all the medication, all the administrative stuff as well. And you have to do that. So even in the hospital, you do rely on the people around you as well to help you out,
Yeah.
especially family members. And when someone's admitted to the hospital, if they have a family member who's always there, it's so helpful. It actually,
Right.
because they can tell you if something's wrong. They usually help them go to the washroom. If they don't feel comfortable, that's not an issue, obviously, then you would just go help. But I would say family is a huge part of the interdisciplinary team as well.
Yeah, I think now I'd never actually worked in hospital, but I did a couple placements there in school. And, I think it's different though, Joe, because you only have 4 to 6. I mean, now I'm talking about hospitals in Ottawa. It could be different elsewhere, but we only had ever 4 to 6 patients. So, we sort of had more time to, read up on their charts. And these
That's
patients
true.
don't need to be up to the dining room by a certain time. And I know we mentioned this in another I think it was our last episode. But the meals come delivered, and you don't have to deal with feeding patients or whatever the case is. Like, typically they have a dietary team, and they deal with that kind of thing. So in hospitals, I think there's a bit more flexibility in terms of schedule and like reading a care plan.
Yeah.
Patients may obviously be more critical in a hospital, so they may have more health needs, things like that. Where in long-term care, typically speaking, here I'm just generalizing, most of the patients are pretty stable.
Yeah.
But let me tell you, people get awfully mad when you're not on their routine. So, like,
Yes,
I
that's
just
exactly what happened, Leanne. I went to
yeah,
this one man's room, and he was so, and I felt so bad because I don't even blame him. He lives at this place. This is his home. I'm
right.
some random guy, and I don't like, I'm messing everything up, putting everything everywhere. Like, I'm trying to put the sling on, and he's sighing, he's like doing it for me. And
Yeah.
like, of course, he's gonna be upset. I was upset. I was embarrassed. But yeah, that's 100% it.
But you're just trying to do the best you can, Joe. And like, again, the if you just can work as a team and learn to ask questions, and never, for anyone going into nursing or in anything, like, this doesn't even have to relate to nursing. Just ask questions. Like, now I'm not going to say there's no such thing as a stupid question, because I don't really live by that philosophy. I think there is such thing as a stupid question, but you know I am like a firm believer in just asking questions. Like, I
Yeah.
would flow to unit, I would have no idea who the doctor even was on some of these units, Joe, and I would just be thrown in, and they're like, oh yeah, it's doctor's day and here's the orders, and I'm like, dude, I don't even know these people. I don't know what meds are on. I have no idea what the hell I'm doing. Literally just floating by here.
Hmm.
And, I really leaned on my team at the time. And, sometimes, Joe, I would have like at the facility I worked at, we had physio team, laundry, dietary team. We we were really fortunate. We did have a good support team. And so, even from time to time, the physio would come up to me and they'd be like, "Oh, hey, Leanne, like you're working on this floor today. What are your thoughts about this patient or whatever?" And I'd be like, "Honestly, man, like I don't even know. I haven't even noticed." And I
Yeah.
could be honest with them, and I could be like, "But you're asking me about this new chair that they're in or whatever the case is." And I would be like, "What were they in before? Why was the reason for transition? What was, how's the family with this resident or whatever the case is?" I could really just it didn't even have to be a healthcare aide, Joe. I could ask anybody, because
Yeah.
really at the end of the day, now I'm talking about the support team within the facility. So we were a part of we are the interdisciplinary team, but we are in the main circle of care. So we could share a little bit more personal information about the residents between, the immediate circle of care. But when we talk about more community care, we have to be careful of the information that we're sharing, because there's a lot of laws and protection around sharing info too. So I think
Yeah.
there's teams are really great, and I think we need to lean on each other. But there's also a lot of I don't know what the word is, but we have to be careful in what we share.
I think what you're saying is you have to understand, especially in community, when you're in a long-term care home or even a hospital, you know that they're part of the team because they work there. But you have to
Hmm.
be careful if are you sharing information with someone that is actually going to be using this information for this resident, or are you sharing or for this patient or whoever it is you're caring for in the community, or are you sharing information with someone who can't do anything with it and you're just giving them information that they don't need to know.
Right.
And that's really really important of who is in the interdisciplinary team. For example, a family member, they might come over and let's say it's like a second cousin and they'll be asking information about so and so. Do you give that person the information? Because you can say, well, they're family and they can be part of the team, but most of the time it's not. um, we need to realize that the people we're caring for are humans and they have
Privacy.
a right to, yeah, privacy and like to the confidentiality. um, and I think it sometimes, especially in long-term care, that kind of gets, sometimes it can get mixed because like you said, Leanne, everybody is part of the team. And it was the same thing. Physio used to come up to my units and ask me about so and so, dietary all the time, asking about so and
Hmm.
so. And those are people that obviously you can share that information with them. This person coughs after meals. um, this person, in the morning they walk really good, but by afternoon they're just slouching over in their chair. Information like that. Is it appropriate to tell some of these healthcare providers about all the medications they're on, um, about all the routine? And sometimes it is, but sometimes it's not. And I can't say either or, but it's tricky and it's something you have to keep an eye on for sure.
Yeah, I think there's a thin line on information we can share. But then, Joe, I know that you've had this conversation as a nurse, and I know that every nurse here listening has like crossed this bridge, but having the conversation with someone that they can't share that information is so tough. So, like you say, Joe, if you have a cousin that comes to see this resident of yours, and they're asking about, "Oh, well, when was dad's last physio appointment?" Or, how's I guess it wouldn't be dad, it would be uncle or whatever the case is. But this is someone that you can't share this type of information with. It's hard to be like, "I'm sorry, but um, you know, I can't share this information with you, because of confidentiality rights." And that's kind of an awkward conversation, Joe.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, it is. Especially when, let's be honest, like someone could say, "Oh, like I'm their daughter, I'm their cousin." You don't know the dynamic there at all. Like some people don't talk to their families. Some
Right,
people
yeah.
don't want their families to know that information. And if it's honestly what I do is as soon as someone calls, I find out who they're calling for and I say, "Please hold." I go get the chart and I have all their information in front of me. If I'm
Mhm.
by my computer, I'll pull up all the progress notes, all their demographics, so I know everything about that person, including who their power of attorney is. Most times I will only, and this might be really intense, but this saves you because it is a big issue. I'll only tell information to the person who's written on the form on their like profile.
Yeah.
I've had people call and like asking, hey, like she's my friend and I just heard about this and heard about this through the grapevine. Like, is she okay? I can't even say yeah, like she's doing fine because that implies that something was wrong that that person was like kind of hinting towards. So in those
Yeah.
situations, I hang up the phone, I go talk to the person, I ask them if they want to give them a call or if they're okay if I share the information, if they're
Mhm.
able to give me that consent. If they're not, I just simply don't, and I bring it up to the family's attention whenever
Yeah.
I speak to them next.
Yeah, and I think that's the right thing to do. But I think as a new grad nurse, that's a tough realization and conversation that, we learn very quickly how to manage. But, in school, they never really taught you any of that. Um,
All the dynamics, and I find they also don't
yeah.
teach you when to reach out to your interdisciplinary team. If
Yeah.
someone like is coughing after meals, maybe they need a choking assessment done. Like
And
no one
yeah,
ever teaches you that stuff.
yeah, that's what I was getting at here is that, in school, like it's very textbook nursing, blah, blah, blah. But they don't really teach you how to give a report to a paramedic and like what's important to tell the paramedic. You're not going to sit there and be like, "Oh yeah, like if their son was visiting today." Like they don't care. Okay? Like they want the vitals, they want the last 24-hour report, like what's happened, were they at the hospital recently, like, you know, top top priority stuff. But they don't teach you this. This is a
They
learned
don't.
skill. And same with physio. Like we don't I mean, obviously we understand what physiotherapists do or speech pathologists or dietary, whatever the case is. We yes, humans have a general idea of what these people do, but
There's a
you know,
logic. Like logically, you can tell just by the name of them that of what they do.
yeah, but we're never taught the specific information on what to tell them. Do you know like
Yep.
so Joe, let's just say I have a patient here that's or I should say resident because I come from long-term care background. And this resident is dealing with constipation, something so common.
Ooh, very common.
The
Everybody's
first,
constipated.
right. The first thing we do is we go to meds. Well, when was the last time they had Senecot? Are they drinking water? Blah, blah, blah. These are the first things we go to. But I've had such good conversations with our dietary team back when I worked in long term care about, you know, maybe we need to change their diet type, or maybe we need to implement more fiber, or, and I would have a discussion with the dietary aide about the types of medication they're on. I would say, well, let's just go like super generic here. This resident's on hydromorph, but they're taking already 4 Senecot a day, which is absolutely ridiculous. And, I said, what more can we do for this person instead of just loading them up with meds? I said, sure, maybe we
Mhm.
need instead of this like as needed dose or a PRN, we call it in nursing. Maybe we do need something more consistent, but also how can we leverage our other team to provide the best care for this resident that's suffering from constipation? And man, I speak from personal experience. Constipation sucks. Makes
It does.
people grumpy. Okay? Like you have an old lady who hasn't had a poo in 4 days. Of course she's going to be mad at you. Of course she's not going to like you.
Look,
She hasn't
I
shit
I
in
get
3 days.
I get pissed if I don't shit in one day. Imagine four
Right.
days. Like that's
Okay.
brutal.
So this is what I'm saying. I joke about this, but like all I did was leverage a different team member instead of the doctor who's like, oh, well, let's just increase fluids and push Senecot, give Senecot as needed. Like that's all fine and dandy, but how do we get this person on like a regular routine where, they're regular, but we're not constantly pushing meds on people. Like there's so many other interventions that we can use. I just maybe we need to get this person up and walking more.
Yes.
Just let them walk more. There's the physio team. Let's get them more fiber. There's the dietary team, like maybe we need to be turning them or laying them on their left side. The healthcare aides, like
Yeah.
all these people can help this one person's simple diagnosis of constipation.
And that's where
This is,
critical thinking falls out.
yes,
They just think
yes.
of medication. So let's say if you have someone who's on pureed food, they're gonna have a hard time bulking up their feces so it can pass, because you need a bulk feces so the water can come in to your colon so you can poop. So
Mhm.
if someone doesn't have poop in their intestine, pretty much, giving Senecot's not going to do anything. You need a dietary intervention. You need something else,
Yeah.
right?
And this isn't like they don't teach you this in school. They just teach you the pharmacology and the physiological, um, root of, your bowels and whatever the case is for this example. But there's so much more to it, Joe. And it
Yeah.
it blows my mind that people just can't leverage their team. Like, guys, I can't tell you how important it is to use your team. That's it. That's the message of this podcast. We're done. Bye-bye. Just
It's true. It's
ask
true.
questions. Use your team.
Use your team and use critical thinking. Like, if you need help, and coming honestly, if you're a nursing student right now, I'm telling you right now, you're gonna be. Everyone says, "Oh, you should get training here. You're gonna get an orientation. You're gonna get like." I've actually never had an orientation as a nurse, and I've worked in multiple places.
What?
I've never had an orientation, Leanne.
Okay, whoa,
Even
whoa, whoa,
even
whoa, whoa.
even even going up to Nunavut, they literally throw you in, and I was doing meds like within the first like 5 minutes of being up there. How did
Okay,
I do that?
whoa. Whoa,
Right?
we need
Like,
to talk about this for a second. Hold the phone. Okay. You have never had a proper orientation where they didn't go over the safety procedures of a facility or anything like that?
so I had an orientation at the Glebe Center.
Okay.
But so like I shouldn't say I've never had an orientation. I've had those basic orientations, but
Okay.
never an on floor orientation.
Like a
I've never had
shadow shift.
I've never had a shadow shift. So at the Glebe Center I was a student there, which is why they were just like whatever. But at the hospital I worked at, we did online modules like for like all
Mm-hmm.
the safety stuff. They threw me in for the place that I did home care. Same thing,
Yeah.
like they showed you like WMIS and stuff like that.
Right.
But
Yeah.
then you just like they just throw you right in. Um, how do I do
Dang.
that? Is I just use my team, and it might
Right.
sound bad, but like I don't complain about it. I also don't mind. I think it's important to do shadow shifts because you want to ensure that you're giving safe care. I
Yeah, of
always say,
course.
hey, like let's do shadow shifts, let's ensure safe care. But the reality of it is we're in this part of time right now. I don't know if it's ever gonna end. We're so short staffed. Sometimes you're being hired on because they simply just don't have anyone. So
Mm-hmm.
you have to be able to go to a unit. And even if you're someone who you get trained all the time and that's never happened, I'm sure one day it is gonna happen. And you need to be able to handle that. How do you handle that? You don't just look inward and then you use all your skill and everything, because A, that's how mistakes happen. B, that's how people get hurt. And
Mm-hmm.
C, you're only going to be able to do that for about a few days until you burn yourself out. You have to ask and you have to work with people and all get on the same page. Never underestimate. This is what Leanne has been saying. Never underestimate the skills of someone based on their title or position.
Right.
I've
Yeah.
met housekeepers, and there's actually this really cool model. I'm actually going to tell you about this model before I go any further. Here in Saskatchewan, where I live, they actually have a lot of cool um, care models. And there's this one approach to care called the Eden approach to care. I'm not going to go into that approach per se, but it's a great approach, maybe in another episode. Um, but essentially, all the staff on the unit, Leanne, are cross trained in everything. So the nurses are cross trained as housekeepers, dietary staff, laundry staff, and then vice versa. The PSWs, um, actually, at this one facility, the PSWs give all routine medications.
Mm-hmm.
They 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 do they do everything. So there's no dietary and there's no housekeeping. the PSW, so personal support workers and healthcare aides, they do everything. There's not one role for this person is just a personal support worker, this person is just a housekeeper. They do everything. It's all casual, no scrubs. Like you just wear whatever you would wear anywhere pretty much. And then the nurses, they handle all of the PRN medication, the care plans, and they also assist in those like day-to-day activities. And what I
Mhm.
love about this model is it takes away this person is a personal support worker, therefore they know more than the housekeeper, or vice versa.
Right. Yeah.
Or this person is a nurse, they know more than a PSW. The PSWs have to be informed if they're giving their medications. And quite frankly, when I came into nursing, I was a 23-year-old guy working with personal support workers in their 50s and late 60s who've been doing this for 40 plus years. So who are you to go and like think that you know everything because you have 2 year diploma and you know what like your bio and like anatomy, right? Like these people, they've lived this work their whole entire lives. They know a lot. They're very, very smart.
Yeah, I'd agree to an extent, Joe. I struggle with, I think that giving medication, you need proper training. And so,
Of course, of course.
listen, I was a PSW passing medication. Okay. So I had the med training before I was a nurse, and I was doing that at a retirement home in Ottawa. And we would get pushback from the nurses, and I never quite really understood sort of why. And now that I'm, a nurse myself, and looking back, I think that, don't get me wrong, I think that there's totally competent healthcare aides, PSWs out there that can pass medication, but I think there needs to be proper training before they can do that. And I think that, most of these facilities that have PSWs that pass meds, they do it because, honestly, Joe, I think it comes down to money and finances at the end of the day. I think it
Mm,
does. But that's a whole other tangent. But I struggle a bit with the PSWs handing meds. I think that there's a lot of medication that come with a lot of assessment after giving or before giving, and just trying to be very generalized here. But I think that, if they're going to pass meds, they're everyday, even just regular scheduled meds, things change and people change. And, I think there needs to be a nurse overseeing at the very least.
mhm.
I'm just a bit more cautious. I've always been someone that really takes, a lot of attention in giving medication. And I think that, I've made a med error. I've made mistakes. I'm not perfect. And, you know, a PSW could do that as well, but they're not really protected by a body like we are either. So I think there's just a lot of there's a lot to this whole PSW giving meds thing. But I don't want to stay on this. I see what you're saying in terms of this facility eliminating that label of like, well,
Yeah.
I'm a nurse, I only do meds, or I'm
Hmm.
I'm a housekeeping, so I only wash the floor. Like, no, that's
Yeah.
not. We are so much more than just our title, like you say. And I
Right.
actually quite enjoy that this place takes away that sort of, I don't know, stereotype if is the right word, but yeah.
I actually did a tour of this place. I'm not gonna say the name because I don't know about confidentiality.
Right.
I had spoken to them and I did a tour of this place with Jelena because Jelena had a family member who used to go there. And
Mhm.
Leanne, let me tell you, I was almost in tears. This is what every single long-term care should be like. So it's like a community and it's this huge building. And the layout of it is they actually have each unit is like a house. So you literally walk in the hallway and there's like a house, like it looks like a home. And you go in and there's a kitchen that like all the residents use. And these are like long-term care residents as well. And like the PSWs and healthcare aides help them use it. They have like real utensils. It's like a home pretty much. They allow animals. So there's literally
Wow.
cats walking throughout the whole facility. They also have a full aviary, which is like a bird, like a big bird cage with all sorts of birds. They have a pool. They have like a petting zoo where they have a deal with the SPCA, and they're an adoption center, and the residents come and like play with kittens and play with other
Cool.
animals, and it runs outside of the home. They also have deals with schools, so daycares and kindergarten children, they come for like day programs, and the residents can interact with them and like show them around, and like be with the kids, and kind of assist them. Um, Among like
Wow.
many other programs, they have an extensive recreation staff team, and that's one discipline we actually didn't mention was recreation staff. They're huge. If you have a good rec staff for your unit, that makes the whole difference. And at this place, I think they had something like, Leanne, you're gonna like scream right now. They had like 10 rec staff. Um,
What?
I've personally never seen it, and they have specific rec staff. So they had one recreation staff member that I met. He's a musician, and his role is he goes throughout the whole entire building playing like music. And you might hear that and you're like, oh, like he has his guitar and like plays music. I saw one of his shows when I was there. It was like a concert. There was like 100 people watching this man, and he was like performing a concert outside of the building. And it was really, really good. Um, so like, and this place is the epitome of they use everybody. They access the interdisciplinary team so much. And I don't know, as a nurse, it just makes me happy because I could see that the people who live there get treated like real people, and they're not caught in like a system. It's like they go into this home because they can't care for themselves anymore,
Yeah.
but they're still part of the community, and the community still comes to them. It was just really, really refreshing as a nurse and as a person too.
Yeah. Well, first of all, Joe, when I'm old, you can ship me off there. I'll make sure to
For
tell
sure.
Ben
Well,
that too. This
hey, you
place
and Ben, you
sounds
could stay together.
this place sounds amazing. Um, I think, the one home that I did work at long-term care, we had a lot more support and funding and things like that. So the home I worked at had, like the daycare you're talking about, recreation staff, like quite a few rec staff. But not all homes have that. And I can only talk from my personal experience and anything, nursing related, of course. But I think that, yeah, I think if more facilities were like that, Joe, and, you know, just treated people like people instead of like such a routine.
Hmm.
I understand that they have routine to like keep order and things like that, but routine doesn't work for everybody. Not everybody wakes up at 7 a.m. Not everybody wants their breakfast at 9. Some people don't eat lunch. Like, these are, everyone's different. And, again, like when I would float to a unit and one lady wasn't at breakfast or whatever the case was, like I'd have to go to the team and be like, okay, well, why isn't Jane Doe at breakfast? Like, they'd be like,
Yeah.
oh, like she never comes for breakfast, whatever the case is. I'm going on a bit of a rant here, but I guess, I just can't drive it in enough that I couldn't be the good nurse that I should say I am a good nurse, but was, speaking of my long-term care time period, without the team that I had. And, that's also the other nurses as well. Like, I don't want to
Hmm.
discredit nurses in any way. We are, we play a vital role in our healthcare team, but I couldn't do my job well without everybody else. That's
Yeah.
including rec staff, dietary, housekeeping, healthcare aides, families. Like, the list goes on and on and on. And, even the paramedics, like, I can't even tell you, Joe, how great it was when I had a lovely paramedic come pick up my resident. Like, I felt like I'm handing off my care to someone, but I don't even know who the hell you are. You literally
Hmm.
just drove a flashy truck up to the door and you're just going to got to ship my people off with you. Like, I don't know who you are. I don't know if I
Yeah.
trust you. I mean, obviously I do, but it was so nice and reassuring to have, you know, paramedics that would just, listen, ask questions too. Like they can't really give their care if they don't ask questions.
Yeah.
It really just full circle. We all need each other, and in healthcare, we can't do our job well without anybody else. Joe, if I was the only nurse on the floor, literally the only person in the long-term care home on the floor that I worked at, people wouldn't get baths, people wouldn't get their meds. Like there's no way they wouldn't have their wound dressing changed, they wouldn't get their meals on time. Like there's no
That's
way that I
impossible.
could do it all myself. This is the thing,
Yeah.
you know, and it's
And that's where a lot of nurses just, and I think a lot of nurses think this because this is how society, especially during the pandemic, painted them. We do have our toes in everything. Respiratory, like everything, like we do know a lot of stuff. Like I'm not discounting nurses at all. We're supposed to, like, that's our literal job. We are the middleman for the residents to receive all the care that they need. That said, don't put yourself on a pedestal. Don't be one of those nurses that, I'm a nurse, you're gonna listen to what I say. I've heard this too before. I'm a nurse, I don't clean up poop. Excuse me. Like,
yeah.
you're a nurse, you don't clean up poop. And I've also heard doctors say that too. And I get it, doctors, they deal more with like the administrative medical things. That said, if I was a doctor, and I walked in and I saw someone sitting in their own feces and urine, I would throw some gloves on and go and help that person, because no person should have to sit in their own feces and urine when they're unable to clean themselves, right?
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is, take yourself off that pedestal and don't look down at your staff. And it was really hard during the pandemic when we got a raise. All nurses in on Ontario at the time, I think they got, like, what was it, Leanne, like a $4 raise or something like that.
I don't even know. I don't
It
know.
was
There was
something.
so much debate. Yeah.
I was personally really, like, I felt uncomfortable with it because I had gotten this raise when I'm doing MedPass and my PSWs are busting their butts to care for everybody and give the best care possible. And
Yeah.
it's not that I don't deserve a raise, but it's, why did I just get the raise? Why didn't we give our personal support workers more money too? Um, it was
Yeah.
just difficult.
And I think, going back to what I said at the very beginning, Joe, like in media, we see such a spotlight on nursing and, healthcare aides too. They're in the spotlight, and long term care in general, hospital staffing in general, but they never really touch on, you know, the other staff that make it possible to have these proper resident care, you know? Um,
Yeah.
we talk about short staffing a lot, and, if we increase staffing levels on all interfaces, the team
Yeah.
would work better. More dietary people, more
hmm
laundry people, more housekeeping. Like, how great would that be? It's not
Here's
just nursing.
exactly here's another discipline that we actually mentioned: maintenance people. The
Yeah.
facility has to run. Honestly, the amount of, like, at least once a day, I would put in a maintenance, like a maintenance thing over the simplest things, like the faucet's leaking. Like, I don't know what to do. I'm not Bob the Builder. Like, the door is squeaking and it's annoying. Like, can we get some WD-40 or something? These guys, and even like plumbing, to even like bigger issues, like if there's a flood or if like one of the curtains falls over. I have no idea. I'm just making stuff up, but the maintenance team,
Yeah.
they're huge because the facility has to run, right?
Yeah, man, the maintenance guys at the facility I worked at, they would like walk by our unit and like cover their eyes with their hands and be like, no, don't make eye contact, don't make eye contact, because I would put in like 3 work orders a day. Like, this resident's complaining that their room is too hot, this resident's complaining their room is too cold, and they have a right obviously to be comfortable, but I don't know how the hell to fix the thermostat. Just like, you're saying, Joe, I don't know how to fix a sink. Like, I'm the same. Like, I'm like, I can change you. I can do your hair nice. I can give you a shower. I can give you meds. I can give you food. We can go for a walk, do a puzzle, but like, I can't fix your bed. you know.
100%.
So they're definitely a vital part, and they definitely deserve a mention, I'm sure we forgot so many disciplinary other members in the team in this episode, but we'd be here for 5 hours if we really took the time to chat about everybody. But I guess overall, I just want to say, stay humble, guys. Use your team. You guys are all equal. You have a common goal, and the common goal is always to meet the resident needs. Make sure they're safe. Have they had something to eat, whatever the case is, it's all about the resident at the end of the day. So put your cattiness aside, ask questions, stay humble. That's what I'd like to leave on. What about you, Joe?
I think you said it perfectly. Rely on each other. There's no shame in it, especially for you new grads out there. Like you will, like you need to rely on your team, or you won't be able to do it. That's how I've survived.
Right. And
I may be annoying sometimes, but honestly, I don't really care. Like as long as I know I'm giving the care for the residents, like I'll bug whoever needs to be bugged. I'll email the doctor, physio, the family, and I'll call until I get an answer if I'm unsure about something. It might sound like you're being annoying and you're kind of being a pest, but if there's reason for you to think that you're not able to do something or you don't know something that would be beneficial, there's no shame in that at all.
Yeah, for sure. And you can learn so much just from asking questions. And, sometimes all you have to do is ask that question once, and then like, oh, my resident's nose is running after they're eating. Maybe that means that they're having trouble swallowing. That could be just something you learn, that all you did was ask the dietary aid a question and you learned something new. It's just use your team, guys. I just can't say it enough.
Yeah. Well, guys, thanks for listening to the episode. Come back, please.
Don't forget to share this video. Follow us on Spotify. Let us know if you guys like our new graphic, and we'll see you next time.
See ya.
Bye, guys.